Namaskar. Welcome to today's discussion. We are going to talk about a very important and sensitive issue, the Great Nicobar Transshipment Project. This project could change India's position in the Indian Ocean, but it also raises serious questions about the environment and the survival of the Shompens, one of the world's most isolated tribes. To help us understand this issue better, we are joined by Professor T. Subramanyam Naidu, an anthropologist who has personally worked in Great Nicobar Island, conducted research among the Shompens tribal population and also ecology and environment of Great Nicobar Island, and faced challenges during his fieldwork. He will answer our questions in simple terms so that all of us can understand the true picture. First question is, what exactly is the Great Nicobar Project? The Great Nicobar Project is India's ambitious plan to transform Galathea Bay into a major transshipment hub. It includes developing an international airport, a deep sea port, a modern township, and supporting infrastructure. The project aims to strengthen India's maritime trade position while addressing strategic security needs in the Indo-Pacific region. What is the project considered strategically important? Great Nicobar lies close to the Malacca Strait, a global checkpoint through which the most Indo-Pacific trade flows. Developing this island strengthens India's naval reach, safeguards sea lanes, and balances China's presence in the region. Strategically, it places India at the heart of Indo-Pacific security and commerce. Why was Great Nicobar chosen for this project? Its location is strategically just 40 nautical miles from the Malacca Strait, a choking point through which one-third of world trade passes. Great Nicobar offers India a maritime advantage. Developing here strengthens both commerce and national security. Who is leading this project? Project is overseen by Niti Aayog, with implementation involving the Andaman and Nicobar administration and global consultants. It is one of the most ambitious infrastructure venture ever planned on Indian island territory. What scale are we talking about? Enormous. The proposal includes a port capable of handling 60 million containers annually, an airport for wide-body aircraft, a city for over 3 lakh residents, and massive power and defense facilities. This should dramatically alter the island's landscape. How much the project will cost? Current estimates place it at more than 70,000 crore rupees, but beyond money, the true cost involves forest cleared, tribal lives disrupted, and biodiversity lost, things money cannot easily replace. What benefits are projected? Proponents promise jobs, regional growth, global trade dominance, and enhanced security. They see Great Nicobar as India's answer to Singapore and Colombo, a shipping hub drawing global traffic to Indian shores. Why is the project controversial? Because it threatens fragile ecosystem and vulnerable tribe. Nearly 8.5 lakh trees may be felled, coral reefs disturbed, and habitats of rare species like leatherback turtle destroyed. For the Shompen and Nicobarese tribes, it risks cultural extinction. Is this the project first time such development has been proposed? No. Since the 1970s, leaders like Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi envisioned Great Nicobar's strategic role. Prime Minister Narendra Modi now carries this vision forward at an unprecedented scale. The dream is decades old, The challenges is making it sustainable. How should we view the project overall? It is both an opportunity and a danger. It done without safeguards, it may cause irreversible harm. If approached with balance, it could become a model for sustainable development. The choice will define India's legacy. Why do NGOs and activists oppose the project? Critics argue the project threatens fragile ecosystems, endangered rare species like the Nicobar megapod, and risks displacing indigenous Shompen and Nicobarese communities. Environmentalists stress that large-scale construction may irreversibly damage biodiversity. NGOs demand stronger safeguards to balance development with conservation and indigenous rights protection. How does the government address ecological concerns? The government insists on sustainable development guided by Niti Ayog's planning and environmental assessment. Mitigation steps include compensatory afforestation, wildlife corridors, and minimizing displacement. Officials emphasize that ecological safeguards will be integrated into execution so development can coexist with biodiversity, conservation, and indigenous welfare. How does the project connect with international geopolitics? The Indo-Pacific, contested by powers like the United States, China, Australia, and France. Great Nicobar strengthens India's maritime role, secures critical trade routes, and contributes to global supply chain resilience. The project symbolizes India's determination to act as a responsible regional leader amid rising strategic competition. What economic benefits are expected from the project? The transshipment port could reduce India's dependence on foreign ports like Singapore and Colombo, saving billions annually. Along with the airport and township, the project is expected to create jobs, attract investments, and transform Great Nicobar into a vibrant hub for trade, logistics, and sustainable tourism. You personally worked on Great Nicobar Island. Could you share your research experience? My engagement with the island was long term, from 1993 to 1996, and I stayed in Port Blair for doing research in another primitive tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands up to 2001. I lived in Great Nicobar, conducting the first systematic enumeration of the Shompen population and also ecology and environment, funded by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. My work went beyond numbers. It documented their culture, substances, strategies, and biological adaptation, and highlighted the fragile relationship between the Shompen and the forest ecosystem. How were you motivated to do research among the Shompen in Great Nicobar Island? My motivation began in 1992 when I was invited as a visiting professor at the Institute of Anthropology and African Studies, Maximilian University, Munich, Germany. While consulting historical records on the Andaman Islands, I came across a traveler's note describing human habitation near the Galatia River mouth, where the people were reportedly suffering from leprosy. This disturbed me deeply, since no tribal community in the world is known to have leprosy. After returning to India, I applied to the Ministry of Environment and Forest for funding to conduct field research. My investigation revealed that the Shompen were not suffering from leprosy but from scabies. With medical staff support, I helped treat them, curing the infection. This experience was the foundation of my long engagement with the Shompen. Where are the Shompens located and why do they choose such areas? The Shompen are semi-nomadic tribe. The Shompens are not clustered in one settlement but dispersed across 7 major camps, each tied to a river basin or geographical Feature 35 kilometers camp near to Shompen hut. Kotangari camp above the east-west road. Alexandria camp along Alexandria river. Dagmar camp near Pillokunji and Dagmar river. Koken, Piloba and Sigampasti largely clustered near to the Galatia river. Lawful and Trinket camp near Galatia river. So total population is 181 individuals. Among them 112 are males and 69 are females, which I have enumerated in 1993 during my research fieldwork. Shompen deliberately avoid the coastal areas where settlers dominate. Their performance for the dense interiors is both cultural and protective. It allows them to maintain isolation, autonomy, and a life closely tied to forest and river systems. What did you learn about their way of life? The Shompen live in small mobile bands. They practice horticulture, food gathering, hunting, and solely depend on the forest and forest produce. Their lifestyle is deeply self-sufficient, with minimal reliance on outsiders. They are shy and guarded, valuing cultural independence. My time with them revealed how strongly they link their survival to the forest biodiversity. What challenges did you encounter during this fieldwork? Fieldwork in Great Nicobar was demanding. The dense rainforest, poor communication, and constant health risks, leeches, snakes, and the absence of medical support were difficult. But the greater challenge was cultural, overcoming mistrust and slowly earning acceptance from a community that values secrecy. Building rapport took patience, humility, and deep respect for their world. I stayed for the entire period in Shompen complex and developed contacts with Shompen and enumerated the population and collected the data both on physical and cultural and ecological environmental anthropology. How have settlers and development pressures affect Shompen? The arrival of settlers brought many changes. In the beginning, the Shompens were used to live in the east coast region of Great Nicobar Island, where plenty of pandanus fruits are available. That is one of the staple food for them, and also depending on the fresh water from Galatia river. The competition for land and occasional exploitation of tribal vulnerability started. These pressures disturbed the delicate balance of the Shompen's existence. Today, as the Galatia river basin faces a large-scale development, the threat is no longer distant. It directly endangers their environment, food security, and cultural survival. Did you ever fear for your safety during this research? Yes, entering unfamiliar tribal zones always carried risks, and the lack of health facilities meant even minor injuries or illness could be serious. But the greater anxiety came from the uncertainty whether the Shompen would allow me to their space. Gaining their trust was more complex and fragile challenge than navigating the forests. Based on your fieldwork, what do you see as the future of Shompen amidst the Great Nicobar project? The Shompen's future is at crossroads. If the project proceeds without safeguards, they risk cultural erosion, ecological displacement, and potential extinction. But if India adopts a model that respects indigenous autonomy and ecological limits, the Shompen can thrive as guards of the Great Nicobar's biodiversity. Their survival depends on policy choice made today. What lessons can policy makers and planners learn from your fieldwork? My research revealed that development must never treat tribes as obstacles, but as partners. The Shompen embody resilience, self-sufficiency, and ecological intelligence, values modern society urgently needs. Policymakers must recognize that protecting them is not charity but an investment in India's cultural and environmental future. Ignoring this lesson risks irreversible loss. How does your background in future studies shape your perspective on this project? Future studies compels us to look beyond immediate gains and ask what kind of legacy are we leaving? A deep sea port may bring short term economic power, but unchecked, it could destroy a unique cultural and ecosystem. A wiser path envisions development that coexists with ecology and indigenous rights, an India that grows without erasing its roots. What was your biggest contribution to Shompen research? I was the first scholar to systematically enumerate the Shompen population and provide reliable data to the Government of India. My fieldwork documented their settlement patterns, culture, and challenges, giving policy makers the first evidence based understanding of this little known tribe. You can see here that I have received a letter from Secretary AAJVS Government of Andaman Islands about my submission of the reports and first enumeration that I have made. Apart from the above, I have prepared 3 documentary films on Shompen tribes which are hosted in my YouTube channel. Were you consulted for the Great Nicobar project? Neither the Niti Aayog or the Andaman Nicobar administration invited me to share insights. Despite my decades of field work, my experience was sidelined, which I believe endangers both the Shompen and ecological integrity of Great Nicobar Island. Why do you think scholars are excluded from such decisions? Big projects often prioritize speed, investment, and political visibility over long term research. Field knowledge is undervalued, yet it is precisely this lived understanding of tribe ecology and forest systems that is essential to avoid irreversible mistakes. Can large scale development and tribal protection really go together? Yes, but only under strict limits. Development must adopt eco friendly practices, minimize outsiders' intrusion, and always prioritize indigenous rights. If projects ignores these safeguards, protection becomes impossible and both ecology and culture will be destroyed in the process. What protections, national or international, exist for the Shompen? In India, the Andaman and Nicobar Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Regulation Act 1956 prohibits outsiders' entry into the Shompen territory. Globally, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples call for cultural preservation and non-interference. Together, these framework mandate careful rights-based planning. What lessons does history teaches us about such tribe? Worldwide, many small tribes vanished after forced contact, losing land, health, and identity. The same risk looms over the Shompen. History reminds us that once a community is erased, it can never be revived. Development without sensitivity could make the Shompen another tragic example. What is your final message for India's future? Development must not silence knowledge. India must build ports, secure oceans, and grow economically, but also safeguard fragile communities like the Shompen and the ecology and environment of Great Nicobar Island. True progress is when nation strengthens, is matched by compassion and responsibility toward our most vulnerable citizens. Friends, today we not only understood the Great Nicobar project but also heard a heartful truth from Professor Naidu. was the first scholar to enumerate Shompen's and give data to our government. His books and reports sit on ministries' tables even today. Yet, when a project of this magnitude was planned, his expertise was ignored. This is not just his story, it reflects how sometimes in the rush for development we forget those who truly understand our land and people. As citizens, let us demand that science, research, and tribal voices are respected in decisions making. Development without humanity is destruction. If you find this discussion meaningful, please share it, subscribe to the channel, and keep this conversation alive. Together, let us ensure that India's growth does not come to the cost of its most vulnerable people. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.